Welcome back to the Dodo's Nest. I am the Modern Dodo, and you found me here on my YouTube channel where I'm excited to talk soccer once again. I'm going to do it in a little bit of a non-traditional setting, or non-traditional setup, I should say. Let's see if I can get it. I am standing on the patio furniture on my screened-in porch. I think I can already see it. That means that my camera work's going to be a little bit bumpy today, but hopefully I'm going to make it worth your while, because I'm going to roll out a multi-part series here over several weeks across my YouTube channel. I'll also aggregate my videos so they can be sort of pieced together in one view through my website. I don't know if it'll be consecutive weeks because the NFL season is starting off, and that'll make it hectic and a challenge for me to find time to shoot and produce these videos. But I'll do my best to put them out in a somewhat sequential fashion over the weeks ahead. So the reason that I wanted to do this is because I was inspired by new Arsenal signing, actually transfer deadline day signing, Takehiro Tomiyasu. From here on out, I'm going to call him Tomi, because that's what I learned that the adoring fans at Bologna FC called Tomi when he was spending time playing for them in Italy. And the reason that I'm inspired is because 2 years ago, I got to see Tomi play in person, and I'll talk a little bit more about how that played out, what my initial thoughts on him. Teaser, I thought extremely highly of him when I first saw him play. I thought he'd be a perfect fit for Arsenal, but again, I'll save that for probably the third or fourth part in this series, because I want to talk about the beginning of my trip and how the trip originated. So let's see, it was 2 seasons ago. It would now be 3 EPL seasons, Premier League seasons now that have passed since I befriended some of the front office business side executives at Norwich City, and I became a fan of their club. They were traveling here to visit Tampa Bay through a mutual partnership they have with Visit Tampa Bay, and I was lucky enough to become a tour guide, or volunteer to be a tour guide, to tour not only their business staff, but also some of their top sponsors, as well as their players around Tampa for almost a week. Got to know some of them really well. Emi Buendia, a little bit more reserved. Didn't get to know him as well as I did Christopher Zimmerman, who was a lot more outspoken and easygoing, easy to talk to. Got to know a lot of their sponsors, a really great group of people that were a pleasure to host, and got to know an impressive amount of their business side leadership team. So when they were promoted up to the Premier League, it made perfect sense to make my first ever trip overseas and catch not only Norwich City playing in the Premier League, the team that I had recently adopted, but also Arsenal, the team that I had supported since I grew up as a kid. I shouldn't say I was a huge supporter. They weren't on TV over here, but they were the kit sponsor for my club soccer teams throughout high school. So I always defaulted to Arsenal. It didn't help that they were towards the top of the table every single season. So I'm an Arsenal, I'm a Norwich City fan. Both of them are in the Premier League, and it makes sense to go on this soccer trip. Originally, what I found out was that I could see Norwich City on one weekend and Arsenal on the next weekend. I couldn't see them both in one weekend just based upon the schedule, how it played out with my work, with NFL travel commitments, things of that nature. So I would have to spread it over a week, which made sense given the amount of time it took time just to travel over to London, the amount of time it took, I should say. So I decided to spread it out over a week. I also knew that I had enough business connections that during the weekdays, I could travel to different clubs, such as Liverpool, Manchester City, and get a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at their business office and see how they were functioning based upon being a peer in the industry. So I set out to make the trip happen and map out my travels. And what I quickly discovered was how close France, Italy, Germany, Spain, all these neighboring countries were to each other. It just wasn't what I was used to, having never traveled overseas. So noticing that England and France were just as close as where I grew up, or where I'm at now, let's say Florida and Georgia, I decided to look at what it would look like if I ventured into France. And the travel was very affordable, and I quickly discovered that travel plus hotel in France was less expensive than hotel alone in London. So I came up with the idea to scour the world and see what it would look like to attend the biggest soccer fixture in the world each and every day while I was traveling. It allowed me to put together a fixture set of 7 different matches over the course of 11 days, traveling to 3 different countries. Starting with England, down into South France, over to Italy, and then back into England for the second weekend. Narrowly missing the cut were Spain and Germany. I'll get you guys next time if I don't hit up Africa first. So I decide to fly into London. I start doing things like my passport, and I discover one big flaw. My company-owned cell phone is not going to work on an international data plan. So I committed to life of occasionally checking in on Wi-Fi just to let people back home know I was alive, but not having a cell phone signal, which would make my travels and my map questing and things of that nature even more challenging along the way. So I had to be really, really precise. I mapped up my entire plan. I felt confident until I landed in London, and I think it was air flight to some sort of shuttle and then maybe a subway. And I got off at my subway stop, and I quickly realized that I was lost with no map or cell phone service to get me to my next destination. So overwhelmed from the moment that I stepped off the plane, and I just started to wander. Luckily, I wandered right into the entranceway of, and I hope now that I'm on video, I'm not butchering this, but it was the Royal Botanical Gardens. And if you've been there, you know what a gem I stumbled upon. If you've never been to the Royal Botanical Gardens, you should check it out. It is a massive, immaculately kept park with different historical buildings littered throughout. I don't even think that I could make a guess as to the size of this park. It is perhaps 3 miles long. In short, I was able to get some iced coffee at the stores that were selling iced coffee there. And I wandered the park with my luggage, backpack on, and the rest of my luggage being wheeled behind me. It was quickly became too toasty. I had to change into shorts, but I wandered the park. I enjoyed lunch, fish and chips, and beer, more iced coffee. I must have wandered that park for 5 or 6 hours before all of a sudden I realized I was running out of time. I literally had lost track of time wandering the Royal Botanical Gardens. So, highly recommend the Royal Botanical Gardens. But I was due up in northeast England, up to Norwich City, where I was going to be spending the night, and I had no clue how I was going to get there. So I guess I ran out the backside of the gardens. At that point, I was able to connect with some Wi-Fi, do some map work, figure out where I was going, and I grabbed a taxi to the appropriate, I think it was subway station, over to the right train, and I caught the second to last train into Norwich that night. It might have even been the last one. And I hunkered down for what was my first, well, actually, to be fair, my second train ride. And having successfully just navigated my way to the train, I couldn't have been more thrilled to finally hunker into the seat and be able to relax and start anticipating what was ahead. What was ahead was me getting off of the train at a dark train station in Norwich at slightly after midnight. And once again, with no clue how I'm going or where I'm going. As you start to move into the northern parts of England, if you will, the amount of public lighting, street light type of things becomes less and more remote. So it was extremely dark. It's after midnight. I have no clue where I'm going. So I start walking towards the most well-lit area, which would conceivably be the downtown area. And eventually I can start seeing the Norwich Stadium off in the distance. So I think, given the time, I am at 10 minutes for this week. I'm going to go into what happened once I arrived in Norwich and how that played out. And then I'll cut it after game one, which will be Norwich City. So I walked into Norwich's stadium at about 12:30, 1 in the morning. My hotel was connected to the stadium, so that made it a nice landmark to find. I checked in for the evening and went to bed because I had a big and exciting day ahead of me the very next day. And the very next day was actually a down day for me, but it was a business day in the Norwich City offices. So I was able to dress in my more professional attire, if you will, let's call it business casual, and join the Norwich City sales and marketing team to start out with a tour of their facilities. Thank you so much to those that hosted me, as well as to join them for business style discussions over tea, of course, regarding sales, marketing, ticket operations, basically how we're doing business in different areas. So an absolutely dream of a day. Thank you, Norwich, for the hospitality. I was able to have dinner that night. I think I went down to the water and had fish and chips again. I'm pretty sure that's the way I went there, and enjoyed a nice evening. I went to bed a little bit early because the next morning was game day, and I wanted to wake up early and have an absolutely amazing day. I did wake up early. I'm an extreme early bird. I woke up extremely early and was able to take a sunrise run around downtown Norwich. Absolutely beautiful and historical, especially at sunrise with the homes sort of cascading up the hills, if you will. It was a beautiful way to start the morning before heading into match day. And match day for Norwich City, my first ever international soccer fixture and my first Norwich City home game, was enjoyed with a few of their sponsors while watching American Wonder Kid, Christian Pulisic, as well as my personal favorite current soccer player, Olivier Giroud, both for Chelsea. So while Norwich City didn't get the result that I was hoping for, the stadium was absolutely beautiful. The hospitality was outstanding. The atmosphere was everything that we're told that it will be, and more once we get over to the Premier League. And the fact that I got to see Giroud and Pulisic, not to mention guys like Pookie and Buendia behind me, couldn't have been a better way to start the trip. So thank you, Norwich City, for hosting me and inspiring me to make this trip. And if you're watching this and you've been even at all entertained, stay tuned, because teaser, when I post my next video, I'm going to tell you about the next step in my travels, a visit to Tottenham Hotspur, and why I fly their scarf upside down on my screened-in porch. Come on, you Gunners, and thanks again for joining me. I am the Modern Dodo. Follow me daily on my social media channels. That's Twitter, that's Instagram, Facebook, and even TikTok, or my website, www.themoderndodo.com.